West Denver. Sleep deprived and heavily caffeinated.
All right, let's do this then.
This is the Jeff and Bill Show.
I don't agree with that.
They don't always agree, but hey, at least they have coffee.
Coffee.
And each other.
I love you, man.
God help us.
I want to bless him. We need all the help we can get.
Now here's Jeff Hunt and Bill Thorpe. The Jeff and Bill Show on News Talk 710 KNUS.
Nine a.m. in the Mile High City on this Wednesday, August 6, 2025. Good morning, Denver, Colorado. You've tuned in to the Jeff and Bill Show, News Talk 710 KNUS. I'm your co-host, Jeff Hunt, along with Bill Thorpe, bringing you the freshest insights, hottest takes from the right, left, and center. Coming up after news and comment with Blake Olson. Great organization, Filling the Void. The founder is live with us in studio, Kelly Swan. And we're going to be talking actually how you solve homeless problems, the problems that the homeless are facing, because Colorado, America, spending record amount of money on an effort to try to alleviate homelessness. Is it working? Do we have more homeless now? Well, the city of Denver, for instance, has spent hundreds of millions of dollars trying to address homelessness, buying up hotels, providing that transitional housing opportunity for people. Has it moved some people into permanent housing? Absolutely, it has. But now we have actually, according to counts, more homeless in Denver than we did prior to all this. So what are we actually building? What are people facing? And how do we address it and help people, human beings, thrive? That is the goal with all this. We're going to talk with Kelly Swan, founder of Filling the Void, coming up. But now it's time for news and comment with Blake Olson.
Blake Olson.
Blake Olson, news and comment.
Good Wednesday morning, 70 and really nice outside, expecting a high of 96 today. This portion of the news sponsored by Pastor Camp Heating and Air Conditioning at 303-777-1234 to learn more about special savings opportunities on Lennox equipment. Our top story, a man continues to recover from a near-fatal rock slide on a Colorado 14er. Ben Jamison was struck and severely injured by a falling microwave-sized boulder while scaling Little Bear Peak near Alamosa on June 27th. The blow caused him to fall 30 feet and knocked him out thanks to a couple of nearby climbers and the Colorado National Guard Blackhawk helicopter crew was called out to perform the rescue over 13,000 feet in elevation. Jamison remains hospitalized in the Springs. The suspect that in that deadly mass shooting at a Montana bar is still on the run. Governor Greg Gianforte says he signed an executive order on Tuesday to make more financial resources available for local authorities as they look for Army veteran Michael Brown. He is believed to have opened fire and killed 4 people in a bar in the small town of Anaconda last Friday. Texas Republican Senator John Cornyn asking the FBI to track down Democratic state lawmakers who have fled the state. 50 of these knuckleheads have left Texas in an effort to stop the GOP from pushing through a redistricting effort.
Well, I think they've abandoned the state. Nobody's seen anything like it, even though they've done it twice before. And in a certain way, it almost looks like they've abandoned the state. It looks very bad. Yeah, go ahead, please.
Should the FBI get involved? Should the FBI get involved?
Well, they may have to. They may have to. No, I know they want him back. Not only the Attorney General, the governor wants him back.
And this morning, Neil deGrasse Tyson, whatever, was on CBS a few minutes ago talking about the moon. One of the hosts said that he's concerned with colonizing the moon.
But if we want to keep growing a population or if we want to live forever, All right, we're going to need another planet.
So is that the moon? Because A,
I don't want to live on the moon.
Right? Will it serve
comes the
as a
question.
functional life source eventually for human beings? And B, we know how the age of colonialism worked on this planet. Should we be trying to colonize and saying that there's a keep-out zone that not other countries can participate in having?
Well, the real problem with the colonization history in Western civilization is that there were people already there, right? There are no moon beings that were displaced. As far as we know.
For the love of God. All right. Sanctuary City, Denver doesn't like ice, but a lot of people do. DHS Secretary Kristi Noem on Fox News this morning.
Our recruitment efforts to hire 10,000 new ICE officers has been extremely successful. Lawrence, as of today, we have over 80,000 applicants for those 10,000 positions already. People and patriots across this country that say, we want to join, we want to help and be a part of this effort. It's overwhelming to see the amount of response and support that our ICE officers have gotten and people who want to join their ranks.
The Midwest and Northeast will start seeing some relief from poor air quality caused by Canadian wildfires. A wind shift will push the smoke away from the surface, and most air quality alerts will start to be lifted tonight. We're also getting a lot of it. What the heck is going on in Canada? My goodness. The Kremlin says the meeting between U.S. Special Envoy Steve Witkoff and Russian President Putin was constructive and useful. DJT has set a Friday deadline for ending the war between Russia and Ukraine. More tariffs could come against Russia if it doesn't come to an end. Republican Senator Marsha Blackburn looking to be the next governor of Tennessee. She made it official with an announcement today. ESPN's new direct-to-consumer streaming service will launch this month. The new service will cost $30 per month when it becomes available August 21st and include access to all of ESPN's linear channels. Howard Stern is being canceled by SiriusXM despite his hard-hitting and objective interview with Sleazy Joe last year.
Respect for Marriage Act, what the hell is with people with this gay stuff? Who cares if someone's gay? I mean, how is it affecting anybody? People in love, it's good, right? Love is good.
My dad, we saw two men kissing one another in Rodney Square when I was going in to get a license. And I looked at him and he said, Joey, it's simple. They love each other.
That's it. That's how I look at it.
That's it. That's how I look at it. Unbelievable. What an interview. Howard Stern, 180, man, from 20 years ago. The Rockies lose to the Jays 10-4. Getaway day today once again at Coors Field. First pitch at 1:10. Broncos training camp continues. 79 in Lone Tree, 78 in Broomfield, 80 in Denver right now. Jeff and Billy continue.
And I just want y'all to know that I'm standing 10 toes down with my homie.
Blake Olson, News Talk 710 KNUS.
Your 710 5-day forecast, there's going to be a tinge of haze and smoke in the air across the Denver metro. Mostly sunny, hot temps in the mid-90s this afternoon with clear skies tonight, mild still in the middle and upper 60s. Upper 90s for Thursday and again for Friday. We're going to finish the work week mainly dry with some of those brisk winds, lows in the upper 60s. Weather brought to you by L&L Heating and Air Conditioning. For quick, trustworthy, and dependable service, call 720-851-1691 or visit them online at bestdenverhvac.com. You'll be comfortable with L&L. Meteorologist Don Watzel in the 710 KNUS Weather Center.
Welcome back to the Jeff and Bill Show. Kelly Swan, founder of Filling the Void, is with us. We have a great connection to this ministry, in part because it helped save the lives of one of our producers here, John Corbliss, who, because of the work that you've done and some of the people that volunteer with your organization, brought him out of a very deep pit. And most importantly, and you talk to John, he'll confirm this, I believe it, I know you do as well, Kelly. You introduced him to Jesus Christ. It saved his life. That, I say it myself too, Jesus is the answer to a lot of the challenges we face, because a lot of the problems we face are spiritual to begin with, right? They're heart issues. I mean, I would be dead as a result of drug addiction if it wasn't for Jesus. That's what changes things. And so much of what we deal with is a sin problem. John will testify to that. It's a real honor to have you in the studio today.
Thanks for having me back.
All right, Kelly, we were just talking. We had a mayor at one point. Mayor Mike Kaufman went and lived as a homeless guy for 2 weeks. This was all during the height of the kind of COVID pandemic. He grew out his beard, wore a mask, went to different shelters, lived in a tent, all that stuff. And he came back and he had a few things he noticed. One was what we're dealing with homelessness is often tied to drug addiction and mental health, and they feed off of each other. People that have mental health problems are trying to medicate, self-medicate with that, and sometimes drug addiction leads to mental health. So there's this vicious cycle that's taking place. But then there's this kind of enabling system where he said, you just live in a tent and food just shows up. You know, a lot of these shelters don't really demand anything of you. Some programs like Step Denver are different. Love those guys over there. But there's an entire system that just perpetuates and allows people to live like this. And so I think people wrestle with trying to solve homelessness because we've thrown a lot of money at it. It doesn't seem to improve anything. So what do? You guys are changing things. Tell us how you're doing that with filling the void.
Well, you're right, Jeff. It's a very complex problem, and it can really only be tackled one life at a time. And there are no quick fixes. There are no shortcuts. What we have seen and been able to document through 20 years on the streets is it can take someone who is literally on the streets suffering in addiction or anguish or despair or mental illness. It can take that individual easily a decade to get to where society would look at that person and say they're fully rehabilitated, they're living a quote-unquote normal life. And so there's a lot of infrastructure that has to be in place along the way to help that person not just take one or two steps forward, but to be able to embrace that person when they take one or two steps back, and to, again, keep the long term in mind, that it can take years to really see a person approach a point to where they really are, life is different for them. And the temptations they face are always going to be there, but through having a community around them of people who believe in them, support them, stand with them, they can then begin to say no to those temptations and addictions that in a prior time they would have easily said yes to.
That's Kelly Swan. He's the founder of Filling the Void. Now, Kelly, we've lived in Denver and had now multiple administrations. John Hickenlooper saying he was going to solve homelessness within a decade. That was in 2006. Okay, so we're now nearly 2 decades from that. Homelessness is now at a higher level than it was back then. Progressives will go and say it's a housing first issue, right? They're homeless. Give them a home. Then things will get better. From your perspective, does housing first work?
So there are two schools of thought in the homeless space, and one is housing first and one is heart first. Now, I do believe that a combination of both is needed. Our philosophy and our MO, our mindset is we're going to start with a person's heart. Because we believe that if there is no change internally, really, if you change the environment, it doesn't have a lasting impact. Because we've seen people, and it's not to fault housing first, because in every city in America, the more affordable housing units that can be brought online quickly, that's going to help. It won't solve, but it will help. But what we've seen is someone that is just plunked into a motel room or an apartment that has no change of mind or how they view life or themselves, the likelihood that that individual will be back on the streets within weeks is extremely high. And so we always, in our ministry, is we're looking to start with a relationship, begin to walk through life with that person, and to apply Scripture to their lives, let them see themselves through the eyes of God and what his truth says about their life, their situation, how he can change it, that there's nothing impossible for him. We believe that when that change begins on the inside, it will help that individual when they get into housing, then stay in that improved situation rather than coming back out onto the streets.
That's Kelly Swan. He's the founder of Filling the Void. Great ministry. You can go to fillingthevoid.com, fillingthevoid.com to learn more about the great work that they're doing. But look, I imagine it's got to be hard to build relationships with these people, in part because they have probably burned a lot of relationships in their lives, right? Like Billy and I end up in a tough spot. We can't afford the rent, okay? We've got 40 years of friendships, family we can rely on. I can go live in your basement for a bit. Someone's got a guest house. Oh, we'll cover the groceries. Jeff, don't worry. I mean, you've got what's called social capital that's built up that we can rely on. We all need it on a daily basis as part of living a fruitful life. But people that are on the street at that point have burned through social capital. So tell me how you build relationships with people that have problems with relationships.
Well, ironically enough, exactly what you're referring to, I mean, that's kind of a reference to the name of our organization, Filling the Void. And so we encounter people that have lost that social capital you're referring to. And so there's a void in their life, and it's healthy relationships, people that will encourage them and walk with them through life. And so that's one of the voids that we can fill is coming alongside that person. And I can think of one individual, and I'm going to call him Kenny. That's not his real name. But we met Kenny outside, kind of a gas station that was one of the lower end gas stations, not one of the big brands. Pretty dirty environment. And we met Kenny, on the sidewalk outside the store. And he was essentially living in filth. I mean, all around him. I mean, just yucky environment on the sidewalk. But we stopped and talked with Kenny, prayed with him, and then he made a request. He said, "Do you mind if I call my family?" And usually I'm not whipping out my iPhone to give to a homeless individual. But that morning I said, "You know what, Kenny, how about this? You give me the number. I'm going to dial it. We'll put it on speakerphone, and you can call home." And Kenny was a gentleman in his probably like late 40s. And so anyway, this was in January of about 2023. And so Kenny calls his mom. And I had a front row seat to him reconnecting with his mother. And again, this was January, and his first two questions to his mom were, "Mom, how was Thanksgiving? Mom, how was Christmas?" And again, I've got a front row seat to this, and I'm holding back the tears, trying not to make any eye contact, because I mean it was a very heartfelt, private conversation. But ultimately, they reconnected. It's been about 10 minutes, and then later in the day, I called the mother back and said, "Hey, I'm going to text you a pin drop of where Kenny is at. I want you guys to know where he's at," and had a very frank conversation with the mom. And she's like, "Kelly, I appreciate everything you're doing. We know exactly where Kenny is at. He knows he is welcome to come home at any point, but there are rules and boundaries and expectations. And the mom said, I will not allow drugs or alcohol in my house." So she said, "This is the life he has chosen." And so, but again, that's an example where, I mean, the family in that case was there for him. And that's a rarity. We don't see that a lot, because the source of a lot of the brokenness we see in people's lives starts in the broken home at a very early age. But that's an example of where that was a void we could fill. Like at that point, who was going to befriend Kenny on the street? Well, it was us, because that's where we work. Is we don't have a facility or a building per se where we work. We're out on a mobile basis where people are at. And so that was a day we could speak into his life, help him reconnect with family, but fill some of that void you're talking about with when social capital doesn't exist.
Well, that's Kelly Swan. He's the founder of Filling the Void, fillingthevoid.com, fillingthevoid.com. Oh, gosh, man. I think what's so hard for us right now is we want to do something, especially as Christians, our Lord and Savior cared so deeply for the poor, and you want to follow that model, and you recognize they're human beings. So I'll start with this question. You mentioned broken homes. This is where it feels almost like a mountain that's too hard to climb for a lot of Christians, is you have people that have just come from incredible brokenness, stuff that we can't even imagine, abuse, abandonment, divorce, all that stuff. And I've had family members come from this, and you go, I don't even know where to start to help. How do I go back on 25, 30, 40 years of brokenness and help minister to that person? I guess, do you approach those, Kelly, as a effort to try to fix somebody, or just be there to serve them to the best of your ability, and then let the Holy Spirit? I mean, how do you minister to somebody with decades of brokenness?
It's funny because you used a phrase that I train our leaders on, and you mentioned, like, are you trying to fix them? Yeah. And that answer is a resounding no. And so that's one of the first things we coach our leaders on who work on the streets is our job is not to get out there and fix every problem they have. Our job is to go out there and build that relationship, guide them into the decisions that will be beneficial for them, but that individual has to make their own decisions. Yeah. And there's a great spiritual yoke of oppression that is out there. And you mentioned the trauma. I would say probably 99.5% of those we are serving on the streets or at shelters or motels, yes, there is a degree of trauma that most listeners would never be able to relate to or comprehend. And I'll just give you one example. And this is one of the more benign stories I could tell, but we're going to call this individual Wayne. And that's not his real name, but to protect his identity. And so, but when we met Wayne, he was at the end of his recovery process. But essentially, where his trauma started was in his home as a child. His dad got him addicted to alcohol at age 7. So think about that. Before a child reaches double digits, that child is addicted to alcohol. And his mom, she would basically speak one thing into his life. Wayne, you're going to be dead by age 20. So he grows up as a child, as a teen, in a home where alcohol is promoted and celebrated and is a daily way of life. And you have another parent speaking death over that person, that you're not going to amount to anything, you're worthless, you're going to be dead by 20. Well, what do you think Wayne's life looked like? It was a pipeline to the streets. And so anyway, but Wayne's big breakthrough, and he told us as we got to know him and befriend him, he said, I could go days without eating. I couldn't go more than a few hours without a beer. But ultimately one day he passed out on the streets from alcoholism, hit his head, was found unconscious. Thankfully, someone called 911, got him into a hospital, and that's where he began 2 years of rehab. And so I'm happy to report that Wayne is now in an apartment, living what people would say is a normal life. But even though he's been through recovery, been through rehab, and now has an apartment, his disposable income after paying his rent is about $200 a month. So, but for him, that is great success. And as we would look at his life, we would say that's great success, but still think of the needs he has going forward.
Well, so I think a lot of people do want to try to fix homelessness as an issue. So if we're not going to, and I understand, because I think this is the problem that a lot of people have with homelessness is you're like, if I walk up and start talking to this person, I'm going to get pulled into a lot of depth and challenges and problems that I don't have the training, the expertise to be able to deal with. What am I going to do with drug addiction and mental health? So here's $5. But people want to solve this problem.
Yeah.
What is the best way, from your perspective, on maybe as a policy, perspective to actually address homelessness. If the city's spending record amounts of money, the nation's spending record amounts of money. I remember Heritage Foundation one time calculated we have spent more on our social safety net than we have on all the wars combined as a country, and the poverty rate's the same.
Well, Jeff, let's look at this from two fronts. Let's look at the reality of the situation, and then let's look at some form of resolution. Yeah. The reality is homelessness is never going away. Let's look at from a civic issue, roads. Everybody hates roads construction, right? Whether it's the highways, city roads, everybody wishes I just could get up in the morning and there's no orange cones, no orange barrels. But we know that there's always going to be road construction somewhere. The roads are always going to need some improvement. It's the same with homelessness. The challenge is the myth has been perpetuated that the situation can be ended. Right. And every city in America, you're having elected leaders say, we're going to end homelessness by insert whatever year you want. Right. And the reality, we have 20 years of on-the-ground frontline work. So we have our own like qualitative data. If you look at the quantitative national data, in the past 2 years, in 2023, nationally, homelessness went up 12%. 2024, it went up 18%. Why is this happening? Economically, life for many is becoming unaffordable. And so, again, I've mentioned a lot. Cities and municipalities, churches need to have a long-term view of the situation and how do you address it, because it is always going to be with us. And so that's the reality. In the city where I come from, there's a lot of frustration right now because a new mayor has said, we're going to end homelessness. Well, as people look around, the situation's worse. It's not better. And it's because for every one person you house, 1.2 or 1.3 people are entering homelessness for the first time. And one of the biggest waves of homelessness that's coming are senior citizens. And so one of the cities where we work at, 25% of the homeless population would now be qualified as senior citizens. And so that's the reality of the situation. The resolution, again, you've just got to tackle it one person at a time. And what I would encourage people to do is just do what you can. And so there is no one solution apart from Christ and leading people into the truth of God's love and his plan for them. But for just, your average listener, support the organizations that are doing the hard, dirty frontline work out on the streets. And then as you do encounter the homeless, don't enable them, but talk with them. And an easy question for people who are comfortable is, hey, how are you doing today? And just try to engage in a little bit of conversation, offer to buy them a meal, offer to pray with them. And that sounds like for someone who's never done that, they'd think, well, am I really making a difference? Does it matter? It matters to that one individual because they may have gone weeks without any human interaction, anyone showing them any degree of respect. And so even a 2 to 3 minute conversation with someone, shaking their hand, asking their name, you're reinforcing the truth that their life has dignity and that it matters.
That's Kelly Swan. He's the founder of Filling the Void. Kelly, in 20 years of work you've done with the homeless, what percentage of the process of getting people out of it required a spiritual intervention? So I raise that because did you have people that were just like, we fell on tough times and you gave us a place to stay for a week and I found a new job and I'm out. We're good. Thank you, Kelly. Or are you dealing with soul and heart issues that need Jesus Christ? And that's part of the problem we're missing with what I would call the poverty industrial complex, is when out of the process of getting folks out of homelessness, what was the percentage that needed a spiritual issue addressed?
Golly, I'm going to say north of 90%. Yeah, easily. And if you look at a person's life like an onion, there's a lot of layers to that onion for those who are on the streets.
Well, and I'm not trying to be judgmental because I'm a spiritual issue. I start my day every single day with a devotional because I know my problems and the challenges I'm going to face are going to be rooted in my spiritual battle. And if I don't get my spirit right, I can't do the rest of that. I can't do the show. I'll start throwing bricks at Bill. So, you got to have your spirit right. I'm not trying to judge people out there, but it seems like we miss it if we don't address the spiritual issue.
Oh, absolutely. And I would say from that standpoint, the situation of what we would call a normal person who has an apartment or is in a house, someone like any of us, compared to the homeless individual, we see those as two very different demographics. And to a degree, intellectually, you could say that yes. But in both cases, the difference really is the window dressing. So you can look at the person on the street and be like, oh, wow, like, man, they're broken. But there may be somebody in your office that is just as broken who's working in the office next to you, but the window dressing looks different.
They can hide it.
And so there is a core heart issue for which there is only one answer, and that is the love and redemption and mercy of God.
Wow. Well, we're talking with Kelly Swan, founder of Filling the Void. When we come back, I'm going to ask him how they do their ministry. So what do they do? What do they go out into the communities? How are they making an impact? You're not going to want to miss this conversation. They're actually addressing the problems. They're not just pushing it away, hiding it. They're changing lives. Check out fillingthevoid.com. Fillingthevoid.com. We'll continue. You're listening to The Jeff and Bill Show.
This is Denver's Talk Leader, News Talk 710, KNUS.
Welcome back to the Jeff and Bill Show. Joining us live in studios, Kelly Swan, founder of Filling the Void. Great ministry. And in fact, it's a ministry that affected one of the best guys we have here at the station, Johnny C. John Corbliss. He's now joining us because this is his day off, but he's still listening and wanted to call in and talk. Good morning, John. Thanks for joining the Jeff and Bill Show.
Good morning.
Hey, good morning, guys. Good morning, Mr. Swan. It's so great to have you back in the area, man. This is awesome.
Great to hear your voice, John.
So, John Corbliss, tell us how Filling the Void affected your life.
Wow. Okay. I started working with Filling the Void even before I had my apartment. I was still at the crossing. And, I met Tom, and Tom and I just hooked up, and he said, John, why don't you come with me to the Martin Luther King Library over and hand out Chick-fil-A? And I'm like, okay, maybe. And I did. I didn't realize that, it was amazing. You got a chance to, I learned a lot. And, Kelly's exactly right. It's relationship. It's connection. Nobody preached at me. Nobody instructed me. They just listened, they prayed, and they let me interact, handing out the Chick-fil-A bags to others, and where I could do the same thing. And it just continued on. And it taught me about grace, and it taught me about how grace isn't something to be regulated, Don't be stupid, but, man, just be in your heart when you're talking to people. That's it.
Now, John Corbliss, producer here at 710 KNUS, who's been impacted by this great ministry called Filling the Void. John, you've been open about the struggles you had. Tell people and just remind people where you came from, what changed in your life, and where you're at now.
Well, I was like 17 years homeless. No permanent address. I was either hopping from rehabs or hiding in teen challenge or living right out on the street. And I was stone addicted. Even when I wasn't drinking and using, I was still, I was still an addict. And I ended up being homeless and drinking and using. And the final point was, it finally changed when after I got my apartment. January 6th, 5th, I was in the hospital again, and because of alcohol, crying out to God again because of alcohol, and then from there, God flipped the switch. He just said, boom, you're done. He's had enough. and everything changed. And this was after I got my apartment. I was like 8 months in, and I had wrecked my life in the apartment. But God delivered me, and it's 42 months today, as a matter of fact, clean and sober. And it's the best life I've ever had. And I still work with Kelly. I still work with Tom, who's like my best friend. And I still learn lessons, because the thought that just putting them in an apartment is the answer, that's not the answer, because that's just the start. One of the things, and Kelly talked about it, this guy, after he pays his bills, he has $200 a month less in disposable income. That's a thing. I had to learn how to pay bills, be accountable, be responsible, be accountable to people. Like, Tom knows everything. Kelly Michaels, I talk to him a lot. I hold myself accountable because I need it. And there's so many things that after you get off the drugs and alcohol, and praise God, God's a nut that he did this for me. But there's so much more than just, let's just give him a home. No, there's a ton more. And part of that is the connection that I made with Filling the Void. And I still hand out Chick-fil-A. I still hand out sandwiches. They even come to where I live at and hand out sandwiches to the other residents. That was something that I asked them to do, and Kelly and Tom were right on it, and that's thinking awesome.
That's John Corbliss. He's a producer here at 710 KNUS, produces our show about halftime along with Adam here. John, thank you so much. Kelly, I want to ask you this. Let's talk strategy. What do you guys do? What does the money that somebody donates go to? How do you change people's lives?
It starts with the heart, and the way we reach the heart is we start, as John said, with an offer of something that is appealing to eat. And so we are never, as an organization, going to be out on the streets schlepping hot dogs or bologna sandwiches or peanut butter. We want to honor the dignity of those we serve. And so, again, just offering someone Chick-fil-A or an Arby's sandwich is like, whoa, like, what's the catch? No, it's free. Like, our donors have paid for this. But that allows us to get their attention. And then in all of our brown bags, as we've talked about, we have got a white envelope, which is that encouraging word. And wow, just based on what John said, let me just read just an excerpt. And these are very short. For your listeners, this is like a 15 to 20 second read. But this is one of the devotionals that goes in our bag. It says, everyone needs a story. Maybe this can be yours. God delivered me from going down to the pit, and I shall live now to enjoy the light of life. Dear friend, that can be your story. That's the story God wants you to have. You're not unlovable. Your situation is not unchangeable. Don't let your thoughts take you there. God will bring you back. And so this is what we're really after, is that soul change. And again, the brown lunch, the sandwiches, that allows us to present this truth that in John's case began to really affect and change his life.
Wow. John Corbliss was with us, 710 KNUS, a direct impact from this great ministry in our lives. It really is wonderful. Kelly, my wife and I would love to give you a donation today, and we're going to donate $150, and I'd like our listeners as well support this great ministry, fillingthevoid.com, fillingthevoid.com, and I'm going to do that in honor of impact you've had in our lives with John Corbliss. Great guy. Yeah. Great guy. So thank you, Kelly, for coming. We'll continue this conversation. You're listening to The Jeff and Bill Show.
This is Denver's talk leader, News Talk 710 KNUS.
Wake up, Denver. There's no better place to start your morning than IHOP, where the pancakes are fluffy, the coffee is hot, and the smiles are endless. Wednesday, August 27th, join Jeff and Bill as they broadcast their show live from IHOP at 1595 South Colorado Boulevard in Denver. You're officially invited to be part of the excitement. Come grab your favorite breakfast and watch the Jeff and Bill Show in action from 6 to 10 a.m. Don't forget to try the special Jeff and Bill breakfast. Pancakes, any style eggs, and crispy bacon, all for just $7.10. It's a deal as good as their hot takes. All they need is you. Bring your appetite, bring your friends, and kick off your day with great food and great conversation. See you Wednesday, August 27th at IHOP.
Whew. Man, these days they get me at my core. Because I love guys like John Corbliss here at 710 KNUS. He's a gift to our family, and he's come through an incredible journey. And part of that journey, supported by Filling the Void, and happy to support them today. My wife and I are making a donation, and I sure hope you will go to fillingthevoid.com, fillingthevoid.com. They understand the problems with poverty. It's a relationship. It's a heart issue. It's a Jesus issue, which is what I believe. So support the good people at fillingthevoid.com. Kelly Swan, founders, live in studio with us. Bill, you got a question for him?
That's what, Kelly, what I want to ask you is something you guys kind of touched on, but I want to dive a little bit deeper into it, is the rejection. So you're out there, and you're not batting 100%. My guess is you're somewhere more like a Major League Baseball player. You're missing more than you're hitting. But what I want to know is, why do they tell you no? What is the reason that you're offering them a path forward, a path to get out of the situation they're in right now, a path to break the addiction, yet they still refuse? Why?
Well, I appreciate the compliment, and if we were batting 300, 3 out of 10, I would take that every day of the week. As I was sharing with Jeff offline, if our percentage of success is 1 out of 100, that's fabulous. And so for every John that we have that is a success story, there's 99 that aren't. And to answer your question succinctly, is out on the streets, you can live however the hell you want. There are no rules, no expectations. As John mentioned, no accountability. There's no structure. You can do whatever you want. And the very second you enter that path of rehabilitation, literally everything changes. Expectations. If you enter into a shelter, they're going to tell you when to to go to bed, when to get up, when to eat, when to take a shower, things you can't do. And so that step into that road to recovery, we've seen it. It can take a decade. Wow. Because you're literally giving up the only way of life that you know, which is I can do whatever I want because nobody cares and my life doesn't matter. And if I pass out on the streets, who cares? And so that's why it is so hard to get people to take that first step, which is why our answer is we just got to put the Word of God in front of them. And then again, they can make a choice. But we believe the Word of God, once it gets inside their head and their heart and their mind, their soul, their spirit, it can spark something that says, you know what? Maybe I should just be living however the hell I want.
That's interesting. I hadn't thought about the idea of expectations as part of the reason for the rejection, but that makes total sense. That part of the reason that they find themselves homeless to begin with is a rejection of the expectations of our greater society, both in how I'm going to behave and how I'm going to live and how I'm going to conduct myself, down to even where I'm going to eat, where I'm going to go to the bathroom. It is a complete rejection of all those expectations, and then having to break out of that addiction cycle, but also then start holding yourself accountable to society, because again, other people will hold you accountable, but you got to do it yourself, to those expectations, and saying, now I'm going to play along with this game that previously I had rejected. That's got to be really difficult. That's got to be a huge hurdle to overcome.
And what we see in a lot of lives that are successful is they do reach that point of absolute, utter brokenness, where they finally get so fed up with themselves and their way of life that's their point of breakthrough. And it's what we as a society would call, they're at rock bottom. And we have different pictures of what that looks like. But for those like John that reach that point, they really can begin to recover. Yeah. And as we say, as we encourage those we serve, is, hey, we know there's pieces of your life scattered everywhere. God's the one who can pick up the pieces. We just got to take one step at a time and trust Him every day with whatever our needs are.
Ooh, and that's got to be tough, the idea of just that trust. Too, because part of the reason, part of what they've learned on the streets being homeless is not to trust. You have to distrust everybody because of the situation you're in. And then to have you come in and say, hey, I got someone you can trust. You're like, wait, hang on. That's got to be hard too, just psychologically, for someone to grab a hold of at times.
Oh, and Bill, even go back to their life before the streets. And I made a reference to, everyone wants a quick, easy answer. Why are they like this? And again, from 20 years of qualitative analysis, it starts in the broken home and the trauma they experience at an early age.
That's Kelly Swan, founder of Filling the Void. Go support them at fillingthevoid.com.
Yes,
fillingthevoid.com. If you've missed any of the show, go to 710KNUS to download the podcast. You've been listening to The Jeff and Bill Show.
We are Denver's talk leader. This is News Talk 710 KNUS.